Now then, so we have a new patch out. So I thought I'd kind of go into this completely blind. I've not read these myself yet, so we'll just get a bit of a, I guess like a first reaction. Um, it's going to be our first competitive season back because the last few have not counted for like crown points or opens or anything like that. So I expect Pro Ladder to be a little bit more competitive, which is going to be fun. I'll probably be playing a lot more next season. I haven't played a huge amount this season, so yeah, it'll be nice to get back into it. So, uh, draft mode's finally out of early access. Beautiful thing. I tried draft mode a few times, and in general, it was pretty fun. It was like any of those kind of modes in any other card game. A lot of sort of randomness to it, but I didn't play it too much because a lot of the appeal for me is some form of like reward or like progression involved. And so because it was kind of just testing it out, I didn't play a ton. Um, but yeah, now it's gonna have rewards, which I like the idea of. Actually giving it value. So it's pretty much what I expected, standard ticket system, with rewards based on the amount of wins. There'll probably be one of those things where it's like up to 7 wins, 12 wins, whatever, and up to 2 losses, 3 losses, whatever. And rewards based on how many wins you get in that time, which I'll definitely be giving that a try tomorrow. Initiative change to trigger this ability if you haven't used an order this turn. That's interesting. So what this now means is things like Quen into an Igni, for example, won't cancel out initiative on Igni. You can pull it with an era, and I kind of like that, to be fair, because it doesn't take away from the point of initiative. Like, the point of initiative is to remove your ability to like set up things, so that's why they changed like Regis to work like that, so you can set up all your little units to like 1 and 2 and then play Regis. But obviously pulling it with like an Aeromancy or just any tutor doesn't really interact with that in any way. So yeah, I really like this. I really like that. It makes a lot of sense. Fisher King getting buffed, whatever. Knickers and Roach getting a buff. That's good. That's like pretty good. That's good for like Hyperthane. It's good for Clog. Just I mean, it's good for Lippy as well. Maybe I'll try out some Lippy because an extra point on Roach, an extra provision off Knickers. I think Knickers maybe needed that provision drop. So, but yeah, that's pretty great, to be honest. Because Roach was already solid in any deck that's looking to thin. So, and like most decks that are thinning so hard they run Roach want to win round one. So yeah, I really like this. I really like those two changes for sure. Monsters, Montat, shock. Still terrible. I mean, the problem with Montat is like it kind of requires like a lot of setup. You need to be like swarming and putting a lot of monsters in your graveyard, and the only way to do that is like really suboptimal. It's usually the most efficient way to get a lot in your graveyard to make a big Montat is something like Araka's Swarm and then running like a Siegfried to like purify them all. But that's just bad. So the problem with Montat is not that it was too easily killed. I mean, that is one of the problems, that it's too easily killed, but the problem is like even then the payoff isn't incredible. I mean, I could be proven wrong, but it being on an order, it's kind of like a really bad god that requires it to live for a turn. So, yeah. Old Spear Tip asleep. Power change from 9 to 6. Armor change from 0 to 2. Provision cost change from 9 to 6. So they basically just rework the whole card. After 3 turns, summon Old Spear Tip from your deck to this row and increase its base power by 6, then banish self. If it takes damage, summon it, then banish self instead. That's super interesting. That is super interesting. I mean, I kind of like this. I actually really like this. Because what you kind of have is you're putting pressure on your opponent. 6 power is not the easiest to remove. You have to remove it in one go, or it just pulls an old spear tip. So it's not like you can use a leader ping and then like Rebuke or Alza's Thunder it. It has to be 6 in 1. And if your opponent can answer it with that 6, then it summons a 12. So it has thins for a lot of points. I really like this. I really like this because a lot of the problem Monsters has, specifically in Diversion, is like consistency. So yeah, I really like this. And I will definitely be trying this out. That's really nice, to be honest. Oh. And they've added Banish as well because they won't want people clowning on it. Skelliger changes. I think that's fair. I think Skelliger's in like a good spot. Like Pirates is viable, Druids is viable, but neither of them are like game breaking. So I think at the moment nothing really needs touching in Skelliger. I think the only thing you'd want to do with Skelliger is maybe bump up some of the bad cards. But I think no changes is fine. Northern Realms, Uprising. Yeah, they're just fixing it based on what they did before. Got the provision cost on Istrid. So Istrid is the patience. Draw a card, put a card back. Every turn it goes up, you can draw more cards, put more cards back. And boost himself if he draws a spell. And boost the unit if he draws a unit. I think the problem is he's kind of doing the job that Rafad's Vengeance does, but worse. I think is kind of my problem with him. So you don't really need to run this because, like, if you're running Istrid, you may as well just be running a Rafad's instead. Yeah, he's an interesting change. I think a provision drop's fair, but I don't think it's that amazing. Okay, Invigorates had a bit of a change. So 1 less provision, boosting 4 units in hand by 1, and you can do it 3 times. It makes it a lot more flexible. It also this makes it a lot better in like a hand buff deck. So the kind of reason for this is you can run less units because before you needed like 5 units in hand. So I just glanced down and I've seen a Milva change. I love that. But focus on Invigorate for now. So 4 units means that you don't need as many in hand, so boosts onto your talk are more likely to hit stuff you want. And the fact that it's 3 charges means, again, instead of using 2, using it twice, and so you can buff talk twice. Now you can buff him 3 times, so you get even more value. And it does increase the total amount that units get boosted by. So instead of boosting like 10 times, you boost him 12 times. I think this is pretty good. Whether or not hand buff will be good or not, I don't think this is enough to make hand buff good. The problems with hand buff weren't that they could get enough points. Like, you could get huge units with hand buff. That was never the problem. Problem is, it in a game like Gwent, you just lose to a bleed. As Invigorate, especially if you lose uneven. So yeah, it's a bit weird, but we'll have to see. It's definitely a buff. Like, without a doubt, this is a really big buff. Now Milva's had a change. The order's changed from 2 to 1, which is really relevant. Really relevant, because now basically dropping its removal range. Because before, the way it used to work was like with a leader charge on guerrilla tactics, you could kill a 5 with making a bomb or like a rock barrage. You could kill a 7. Now, so that basically meant that anywhere between like any unit from 0 up to 7 could get killed by Milva super easily. And now that range has been dropped down to 0 to 6, which is a relevant part, and also it makes it a lot more awkward for her Death Wish to actually go off, which is you don't want to ever use it where the Death Wish isn't going to go off. So 2 damage gives you that range of anywhere from 1 to 2 damage, quite obvious. But now it's only 1 health unit she can kill. So this is super relevant because A, she plays for less points, and B, she becomes a lot more circumstantial to use because you can't just kind of dump it and know that 2 damage gives you a pretty good range of stuff you can kill. Now something needs to be basically dead before it goes back in deck. So yeah, this is a bigger nerf than it looks like. Like, Drop of 1 damage doesn't look like much, but this is a really big nerf. And I'm pleased about that. Really, really pleased about that. I think it needed this. I also wouldn't be surprised if next patch we get a provision drop of Milva. Because I think hitting it this hard deserves a drop in like one provision. Cercer, effect change to damage unit by 2, boost a random unit in your hand by 2. Yeah, taking out the death blow I think is worth it. She was already kind of mid card, so that's good. Agitate, change from 3 to 5. Deploy, give 1 armor to 2 dwarves. Whenever you play a dwarf, give it 1 armor. Yeah, now it's gone from a more... You'd literally just run this in a Sheldon Skaggs kind of list. Just to buff Sheldon Skaggs, but now you'd just run it in a dwarves only to buff stuff up, which... I think it's terrible now. I don't think you'd ever use in this card. It won't really see him play before anyway, but yeah, not that amazing to be honest. Hawker's Sport, boost an allied unit in hand by 1. It's already boosted by 3. There's no longer an engine, because this, if you remember, was basically a dunker without Veil or armor or the order. Yeah, I think this is bad. After what looked like a good buff to Invigorate, yeah, this is kind of bad. Because the whole point of Hawker Support was you could really get some tall units if you could get these to stick. You could really consistently get like 2 to stick down. So this like plays for more points if the Hawker Support would have reasonably died in like 3 turns. It kind of levels it out as like more like mid-rangey, which I don't really like. And Saboteur, boost an allied unit by 1. If you control an artifact, boost an allied unit by 3 instead. Bad. Just pretty bad. So yeah, after all the good things that looked like from Invigorate, they've kind of killed a lot of the support, which seems a little weird, but is what it is. Ardell's had the wording changed, whatever. Rien's buff, beautiful. You'll love to see it. I think he probably deserved a little bit of a tweak, so yeah, I think that's good. Tony Shalmar, this is the one that like boosts itself based on like how many different factions you've got out or damages in the Nilfgaard card by, I think it's 7. I'm like not even remembering because the card's not really relevant. So you maybe run this in an assimilate deck if you're being a bit of a clown. But beyond that, it just doesn't really work with like what you're trying to do as assimilate, even though it seems like it should be an assimilate card. Renegade getting a power change, I think is fair because we've kind of seen this is used for nothing but like meme kind of lists, which suggests it's probably a bit underpowered, and you'd be right. So Fabian Hale, provision change, completely fine. Not really played, so I think that's fair enough. Maybe you run this in Bounty now. I run it. I sometimes tried it out in Bounty and it was like okay, not amazing, but okay. I think at 7 is maybe playable. Hale's tribute cost changed from 9 to 7, so this was like he damages himself, and it's reduced by 1 for every unit that got a bounty. It's still an expensive tribute. Still a really expensive tribute. You basically get a 12 or 6 if you put like 7 bounties on during the game. That's putting a bounty on every other 10, which is like very doable if you can get a Witchfinder to stick. But yeah, sometimes that's not the case. I mean, I don't think that's going to be enough of a change to make him playable, but I like it. It's going in the right direction for sure. And King of Beggars has had a change. Beautiful. Power change from 4 to 3, provision cost change from 10 to 12, and the counter's been changed from 9 to 12. Yeah, I think they kind of realised they messed up with this one, because this card was busted. This card was absolutely busted. So this is like a cataclysmic nerf, because the counter change from 9 to 12 means that you can't just run this in Savola and say job done. You need some other tributes in there. So you probably just run this in, like, you'd probably still run this in off the books for sure, but you wouldn't just chuck this and Savola into like a jackpot deck, for example. And yeah, this is like a massive nerf. This is like a what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like a 6-point nerf or something like that. So yeah, that's huge, and I'm happy to see it. It definitely needed hitting. That's great, to be honest. Octavia Hills had its power reduced, provisions reduced, has a new ability, boost Nard Witcher by 1. Witch Hunter by 1. This is pretty good. I mean, the point of this card was to have consistency on your draw of your Hails. The problem is that like half of them are bad, so like you'd maybe run the Scoundrel, probably run the Brute, but you weren't really running these two, so yeah, she felt a little clumsy. But giving her the ability to be an engine and give you Witch Hunters, which are typically squishy, a little buff. I kind of like this. You maybe run this in Bounty now, especially with like a provision drop, because the problem was she's expensive to run as consistency. So yeah, I really like this. I really like that change. And Huckster's now a Witch Hunter, and as a new part of its ability, fee 1, gain Vitality. So this is the card that gains Vitality based on how many coins you have, and the tribute boost itself by how many coins you have instead. So giving it a fee that kind of works like that makes sense. Definitely makes sense. I don't mind that. I think it's still a little underpowered. So yeah, I'll have to see. Scapegoat. Power change from 7 to 1. Ability change to Disloyal. Profit 6. Deploy, place a bounty on yourself. That's interesting. Because as we kind of saw, Scapegoat is hot garbage, just a bad card, and you wouldn't use. Whether this is good, so it's basically playing for quite a bit. So it plays for like -1 point, but gives you 6 coins. So let's say that plays for like 5 points. But then you have the bounty, so it plays as like a 6. It could be okay. This could be okay. I don't think it's amazing. I think it's something that you would try out, but I don't know how great it is. I mean, it is 4 provisions, and it's kind of weird that Syndicate are getting spies now when it was only a Nilfgaard thing. But we'll have to see. But yeah, that's kind of weird. Interesting though. It's definitely better than the original Scapegoat, because Scapegoat was the one where it was like if units got bounty, it doesn't damage itself, and it like heals itself if things get bounty. It was just bad. It was like an at best 7 for 4 provisions. It was just bad. So I like that they've just kind of given up on the concept of it and said, okay, we'll just make a new card but reskin it onto that. So I like that. It's interesting. Something to try. Game fixes, fix Regis. Okay, Informant Emissary now correctly gain spying. Okay. And dealing with weird things with Android. Okay. A lot of these changes I really like. They've hit the 2 cards I hoped would get hit in the form of like Milva and King of Beggars, obviously. And some really interesting changes. And I'm 100% going to be playing some Rien's Clog after the change to Knickers, Roach, and Rien's. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to see those, to be honest. And especially going into a competitive season, it's nice to see that 2 of the biggest defenders are dealt with. Like, these cards are dealt with, without a doubt. I don't think Milva's going to go away, but it is a hell of a lot weaker than it was. Hell of a lot weaker. And King of Beggars, you aren't going to see in anything but off the books, would be my call. So, I have no complaints. It's looking pretty good. It's we've already been going on for 20 minutes, so we'll call it there. And see you next season. It's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good.